Welcome to Taking Healthy Back with Maria, with your host, Maria Malec, experience coach, conscience educator, and destination retreat host, presents to you countless ways to overcome an overwhelmed, overprocessed, and overmedicated lifestyle. She'll be covering everything wellness, from getting more from life than you put into it, destination retreats to healthy cooking and conscious education. So please welcome the host of Taking Healthy Back with Maria.
Hey everybody, wellness seekers, happy Friday. Welcome to Taking Healthy Back with Maria. I'm your host, Maria Malec. And what you get here on this channel are all different ways how to optimize your life. And you're going to hear wonderful stories from people who have overcome lifestyle and wellness hurdles and how they found the way out. Today, my guest is SHAWN Livingston. He is a combat veteran who, after sustaining an injury while serving his country, found himself in the throes of heroin addiction. His journey from the battlefield to the depths of addiction and back again is chronicled in the documentary 100 Miles to Redemption, which provides a raw and unflinching look at his path to recovery. Today, we're going to unpack all of that with SHAWN. Welcome on, SHAWN.
Thank you so much.
Happy you're here.
Thank you so much for having me.
How many times have you heard your bio repeated back over and over again?
Quite a few, but it's all good. It's crazy to hear each time.
It is, and it's like a little feather in your cap every time to know where you were, from the pit to the heights. So welcome. So happy to have you on. I met SHAWN briefly through a group called Reinvent the Woman, and he was a speaker there, and I knew that he was meant for this show. And, SHAWN, I really have a heart for veterans, and I just love what you're doing. So I know people could find your story everywhere, but just for our listeners today, give us a snippet of then to now.
Oof. Yeah, combat vet, injured, training to go to Iraq, and got hooked on painkillers. They left me on painkillers for quite a few years and then took me off. Developed into heroin addiction. I had a really great upbringing. Childhood, was into sports and stuff like that, but just lost my way along the process. And so got into heroin, got in a whole lot of trouble, ended up going to prison. And then thankfully, about 7 years ago now, I ended up in Austin, Texas. Discovered the amazing running community that Austin has, the amazing fitness scene that Austin has, and finally was able to get sober and get my life on track. And then the running thing just kind of started taking off, and I quickly got into ultra marathons. And then within my first year of sobriety, I ran 100K, and then started training for a 100-miler. And it was around that time that I started going on some podcasts, was blessed to be able to go on Lance Armstrong's podcast, and then that kind of put my story out there. And then the next thing I know, a director was contacting me about doing a documentary, and that's kind of what brought me here today. They did that, and that's enabled me to be able to kind of travel around the country and use my experience to help others. And I just never looked back. As soon as I saw that, I just kept running with it.
I love your story, and I really dove into your website and the videos, and I got to tell you, on one of the pictures on your website, you look kind of intimidating. And now that I have you here, I'm like, oh, he's not so intimidating. You look like a nice soft teddy bear to me. So I have a whole list of questions for you. I'm sure we won't get to all of them, but my first question is, how does painkillers get you onto heroin?
Pretty easily. Once you're on painkillers for a couple years and then you go off them, the first time I had ever felt withdrawals, I thought I had food poisoning. let's not mince words. I was a partier anyways. So once they put me on painkillers, it was really just dumping fuel on the fire. But
Mhm.
once you're feeling what withdrawals feel like from, hardcore opiates, Oxycontin and stuff like that, then you find out that there's a thing called heroin and it's much cheaper. And then all of a sudden you can't get the pills you need from a doctor. And,
Mm.
I to people like this, like it could be my own mother. It could be anybody. You don't have to, you don't have to be from a bad neighborhood or anything for addiction to grab you. And so I was faced with this problem where now I couldn't get the pills that I needed, and then I found out this little bit of powder will just make it go away. And like I said before, I was a partier, and so I just didn't have that off switch. So I did that, way cheaper, way easier to get, and it just quickly continued to ramp up from there.
I never knew that, and that's why I asked the question, because I've heard a lot of people transition from the pain meds to heroin. So that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing. Um, what does sober mean to you? And let me just preface with several years ago when they were legalizing cannabis. I was kind of involved in that whole scene then, and I met a lot of veterans, veterans for cannabis and all these different things. And a lot of people who I speak to, they say that sober is just refraining from alcohol. Do you feel sober encompasses all the elements that you can be addicted to, even cannabis?
Yeah. So there's a school of thought kind of in the 12-step recovery world. It's all or nothing. You're completely sober for anything. I don't know that I exactly share that same view, even though I'm in that community. To
Hmm.
me, not being tethered to anything. When I originally got sober from heroin, they had put me on a drug called Suboxone, and I was just as hooked to that as I was the heroin, and so I just didn't want to be tethered to anything anymore. I didn't want to have to fear of going on a trip or leaving my house and making sure I had my medication or anything. I had just done that for
Right.
so exhausting. The funny thing about cannabis and the way I look at it, and I'm all for, if something is enhancing somebody's life, if it's enhancing your mental health, there's all kinds of studies now with veterans and MDMA and psilocybin, all these different things
Mhm.
helping you. That's awesome. The thing with me and cannabis is when I eventually got on to shooting heroin, there was nothing in my brain that like registered as far as like understanding how serious that was. It was as normal for me to shoot up as it is for regular people to brush their teeth. And so on the
Wow.
I was never a weed guy. I had smoked when I was younger, but I never went and bought it just because weed never got me where I wanted to be. I wanted
Right.
to be messed up. And so on the rare occasions that weed would be around and I would smoke, that would be the only time that I would like think with a rational brain. And it
Really?
would, where I'd be like, what am I doing? I'm sticking needles into my body. And so some people can say that that's sober, not sober, whatever. All I know is for me, it made me think in a mind frame that I couldn't in a normal state. So I've always had a tough time classifying that as a drug to me. But I know myself well enough to know that if I did smoke weed, I would smoke weed every day. And then again, I'm tethered to something.
You're right, right. I totally agree with you, and I have the same opinion. So that's pretty cool. Um, all right. How did making the documentary 100 Miles to Redemption influence your healing process? Do you feel like you were already healed, or were you still in the process and this got you over the mountain? How did that
No,
play a role?
I mean, it took everything kind of to the next level. I had done a small video prior to that, and it kind of briefly in a quick 2-minute video, it put a very small snippet of my story out there. But I remember being so scared of it coming out, and then seeing the reaction that I got from people, and them coming and saying what this little 2-minute video did for them, and the impact that it could have. And so it was a very valuable lesson for me to start understanding that there was power in my story and that I had the ability to be able to help people with it. And that was a world that I didn't know existed. So once we did the actual film, it just magnified that times 100, and really gave me the opportunity to be able to help people on a much larger scale. And probably the best benefit I got from it, honestly, is I knew the healing benefits from getting my story out there and just kind of taking ownership of my past and everything like that. And
Good one.
I got it through the 2-minute video, but for my family, they were going through a recovery all on their own, just from all the trauma that I had put them through. My mother, my
Okay.
stepfather, the rest of my family. And so I was really hoping, but by them being involved in the film documenting how we rebuilt our relationship and everything, that they would get that benefit too. And they absolutely have. When my mom started, she was so scared of our business being put out because there's such a stigma
Right.
of it. But literally every family is touched by it in some form or fashion, it seems like. So once she knew that and it came out, and then she started getting emails, and my sister started getting DMs from people all over the world, they really started understanding, like, wow, like they understand the benefit that it has. So that, I would say, it took it to the next level for all of us.
I'm sure you never even envisioned any of this happening. And it's probably overwhelming to an extent. Um, what is your ultimate goal with your whole mission? This documentary, your podcast, which we'll talk about in a bit. What is your ultimate goal?
Um, it's funny. People ask me that. I've been asked what's my 5-year goal and my 10-year goal, and all I know is every time I find something I'm passionate about, and when I find that, I have the blinders on. There's no stopping me. I just go.
Right.
And ever since that's happened, life has been good for me. And so all I do is concentrate on putting good energy out and trying to use my experience to help people, and
Mm-hmm.
opportunities come my way and good things keep happening. And so I know myself well enough to know that, like, when I grab the steering wheel and I try to steer this ship, it never goes in a good direction. So I'm just going to keep doing me and doing what I do, and good things happen. But I hope everything that I'm doing continues to grow, because my main mission is to use my experience to help people. And so the bigger the podcast can get, or the more people that know about the documentary, the more people I
Right.
can help. That's truly what helps me at the end of the day. And so, yeah, that's for sure the goal.
I love that. Yeah, that's my mission with taking healthy back, because I really believed our health has been robbed by many industries in this world, and I want to do my part to be a messenger, but then also to help convert hearts. Tell me, what role does God play in all of this?
Man, so funny you should ask that. An enormous part, and it's
Good.
continuing to grow. Uh, in the recovery world, we use the terminology higher power. There's a lot of people in the recovery world that have a tough time with the concept of God, what it is, and that was me
Mhm.
for a long. I didn't know what I believed. I knew I believed in something bigger than me, but I didn't know if I. There were days where I didn't know if I believed in the Bible, or if I believed in the things I learned growing up. But a couple months ago, for whatever reason, I had so many good things going on in life. I have a beautiful wife, a home, so many things I didn't think were a possibility in my life, and just blessing after blessing. But I kind of took a look around, and I was miserable, and I didn't know why. And all I knew is the conversation I was having, every podcast I listened to, every TV show or movie I'd watch, God would somehow end up being the topic. And this is yet again another example of it. I had no idea you were going to ask that question. Uh, but I just started feeling this pull for whatever reason, that they kept coming up, and it was almost like God was sitting there tapping me on the forehead, like, "Hey, I'm trying to get your attention." So
Right.
I started going to a church with a friend, and I met the pastor one time. Next thing I know, I was speaking at the Easter services, and I haven't looked back. I've been going ever since. And so this right now in my life, I have a very heavy concentration on trying to be present, trying to get in the Bible, trying
Yep. Ooh,
and I'm sorry, I'm going to cut out. God,
that's
God plays
okay.
God plays a huge role in my life, but for so long, I would have sat there and said running changed my life, or this person saved me, or this or that. But I now have a pretty profound understanding that it was God all along putting these things and people into my life the whole time.
Right. I love that. And we can talk a little bit more about that, but we already have a commercial break. The time goes really fast here. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Thank you.
I wouldn't say it was because women were complaining about their men, although that definitely was happening. Um, I just seen the need more than ever. There's a lot of men that are lost, and I was that man. By the way, I was the man who didn't know how to lead in a relationship, didn't know how to lead in a marriage, didn't know how to lead financial. Like, so I was that man. But over the years, working on myself, I learned what it really meant to be a man. I learned what it really meant to be a leader and provider and a protector, which I didn't know what that was before. I thought I did, but I didn't. And then looking out into the world, there's people in that space that are guiding men, and some of what they say is good, but then a lot of what they say is it's not good. It's almost like it pits men and women against each other,
Oh.
and that's not good. We need each other, and it's my belief that women are they're just unbelievable. They're just unbelievable creatures. Like, God was not playing when He created them.
So sprinkling a few of them in your garden can help deter things like aphids or grasshoppers or, you know, um, whatever pest is your main problem. And a lot of it's about confusing the insects with scent. So my thing is, I don't use any sort of pesticides in my garden other than neem oil if there's a problem.
And we don't have a special chute that chemicals leave our body. So they get lodged in our organs, in our fat tissues, in our connective tissue. And when people think that they're doing all the right things, but they're still sad or they're still having erratic emotions, anger, even, it's because of those kinds of things that we're not even making the connection. Welcome back. We're with SHAWN Livingston, and we are talking about his rise to redemption. I think that's the title I gave it. So, SHAWN, we talked about God and how He's a big part, and I actually had a question on my sheet here that said, because I think when I watched one of your videos, you talked about filling a void in your heart. And then my question is, did you discover what that void was? And you already answered it. So on one of your videos, I think your introduction video on your website, you talked about a recovery bubble. And I thought this was really interesting because I know there's also a personal development, self-improvement bubble that I was caught in. And it sounds like the same thing. You want to elaborate on what you meant by recovery bubble?
Yeah. So me being an addict, I would always put all my eggs into one basket. And so originally trying to get sober, I was getting out of the military. They diagnosed me with PTSD, depression, anxiety disorder, panic disorder, a whole host of things. And so I tried medications, I tried therapy, I tried all that, and it didn't, at the end of the day, it was a Band-Aid. It didn't work for me. I found spiritual health, and I got in 12-step programs, and I would do great for a while, but what I started finding out is that I would trap myself in the recovery bubble. And to me, that was just everybody I talked to, everything I did, everything I talked about was just recovery, recovery, recovery. And I think that's great for somebody that's newly sober, just getting out of treatment. It gets you in that mindset. It's constantly on your mind. I think that's great. But there comes a point when you need to understand that it's a foundation, and it's on you to find something to get back to living a life. For me, I'll speak for me personally, but if I was passionate about, or something that resembled getting back to living a normal life, then eventually I would be in the recovery bubble and just kind of grow tired and bored of it and then I would end up relapsing. And so
Yeah.
eventually I luckily stumbled into running and met these amazing people. And it was like, wow, wait a minute. There's good people that I can hang out with that don't have to be in recovery. There's people I can go out to dinner with, and they can have a glass of wine at dinner. That doesn't bother me. And I don't have to worry about anybody going to the bathroom to snort lines off the back of the toilet or, something crazy like that.
Right,
And so
right.
be around good, healthy people. And so it really made it real for me to understand that recovery and all the work I did there is my foundation, but it's on me to build on it because nobody's going to do it for me.
Right. So do the things that you do now, are they more holistic in nature, or are you still in mainstream medicine? What are some other things that you tried or are currently doing? Like, do you meditate, or I know you run and you go to the gym, but are there other things that you do to help with your recovering in the moment, your resilience to keep going?
Um, so I mean, in all honesty, it's funny. It's funny now that I never had any qualms about putting any type of substance in my body, but now I wouldn't take a Tylenol if you paid me. It doesn't
Me
make
too.
any sense. It doesn't make any sense to a lot of people, but I know what it feels like to be tethered to things, and I don't want to do that anymore. And so, at first it was recovery, and then I discovered running, and then I got injured running, and then I discovered the gym, and it's just been this cool process of being able to build on these things and understand that these are all tools. And so
Hmm.
we can talk about eating healthy. That's big to me.
Hmm.
I'll be the first to admit I'm not a great meditator. I'm not good at just sitting there and clearing my mind. I know it takes a lot of work, but
Hmm.
I know the benefits that I get when I do go out for a run, or when I'm at the gym or in the sauna. And honestly, prayer is a big one, and
Yeah.
something I just learned. We had just put a clip out from my podcast talking about it, where I said, I got into praying, and I started to realize it was me just talking all the time to God, and I was just talk, 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 but I
Hmm.
never knew I need to stop and take some time to listen. I need to give him a chance or them a chance to answer back. And so that I,
Okay.
that I would consider my meditation. So now in the morning, I have my little routine when I leave my house. As soon as I get in my truck, I put on my little pray app. It says a prayer. I say it back, and then I take a quiet ride to the gym, and just sit there and just try to clear my mind. I guess it's a form of meditation, even though I'm driving, but just trying to see where I think God's pointing me in what direction, and making sure that I'm seeing and catching all the signs now.
I love that. And I do a similar thing because I said to myself recently, like, Maria, you're just talking and talking and talking. You're asking God questions and you're not quieting yourself to even find the answers. And I don't know about you, but it's not that he talks to me, but it comes through a song, a billboard, someone I meet might say something, and I'm like, what?
Yep.
Oh my
Yep.
gosh. There's the answer. And sometimes the answers are quick, sometimes they don't come for a while. But I've driven for 8 hours without a radio on. It's not easy, but you kind of get in a groove. And I do feel that you're in the presence at that point. You know what I mean? So that's beautiful. I love to hear that. Um, your podcast. Now,
Yes.
I was excited to see that a woman on your podcast, Rachel Slocum, or something like that. I know she's like a big social media celebrity. She's hilarious. And I didn't know her story. And I just saw her. She was on social media. She was super funny. I started following her. And then little by little, she would reveal her story. So that's pretty cool that she was on your podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, she ended up, oddly enough, I mean, very sadly, we met at a funeral. We
Wow.
met at a mutual friend that passed away from drugs, and we just got to talking. I didn't understand or realize how big she was on social media until she came on the podcast. Um,
Right.
I'm very good friends with her partner. He and I work out all the time. She's become a very good friend of mine, and she's hilarious, and it's so cool to find all the different ways, like I'm a motivator. I use fitness to help influence people to find a new
Right.
way in life. She uses humor, and it's just so cool that we're able to kind of be creative and find what our passions are and be able to both use those in very different ways to help people. And it's pretty cool.
It is good because we're all messengers. Everybody has a unique story. Someone's going to resonate with our story, right? There's plenty of people to go around to hear us. And I just love what you're doing. So tell us more about your podcast. I'm guessing it's further to, move your mission forward. So it's called I Am Redemption, which I love. So tell us, how did it get started? Did it start after the documentary or before, or what's the deal?
It was never really supposed to be. It's kind of crazy. I do a lot of speaking, and I happen to be speaking at a treatment center in Austin, and it was a family day, and so there was every the clients were all there and their families, and the sister of one of the clients there was um, came up to me afterwards, which is common. A bunch of people come up and talk to me, but she had tears flowing down her face, and she was like, "Shawn, I don't even know what you do, but whatever it is, I just want to help." And I was like, "Oh, thank you. I appreciate that." And we ended up meeting for coffee, and the next thing I know, she was introducing me to some people down in San Antonio, and just amazing human beings that saw something in me and decided to give me an opportunity. It happened that the one gentleman was a vet, and he's also 20 years sober. And so I was just blessed to have them come in my life and then give me a shot. And so when I sat down and we're talking with them, one of the questions was, how do I feel about social media? And at the time I was like, I can't stand it. I don't like it. I'm not good at it. I was like, I'm never going to be the guy that's like holding his phone up and going live or doing clips like that. And they were like, well, how do you feel about a podcast? And I was like, oh, like that sounds cool. But, my thing's speaking. I like being up on stage and talking to large groups of people. And they're like, well, if you do a podcast, you don't have to do social media because then you could just put clips out. And I was like, ooh, tell me more. And so we started talking about it. They have a beautiful, amazing studio, an amazing team of people. And they introduced me to them, and we did one episode, and we did that. And I was like, this is awesome. Let's go. And so the main thing, it's not a recovery podcast. It's a redemption podcast. And so,
Okay.
my one goal when I speak anywhere and I talk with people is getting people to understand that every single person in any room has a very unique life experience. They've been through things I've never been through. I've been through things they haven't been through. But at the end of the day, if you're lucky and you've made it to the other side of whatever that stuff is, then you too have the ability to use that experience to help people. And so when I got sober, it was something that was deep in my heart that let me know that if I was just to get sober and then go on about and live my life and not go back and use that experience to help people, then what was it all for? And so just trying to empower people and get them to understand that. And so we have people from all different walks of life. I've had a bunch of pro athletes on, local people in the recovery community, authors, other podcasters. It doesn't matter to me. They don't have to be famous or anything like that. But, I've been very blessed to get some big guests with, pretty big following. And so able to kind of balance that and help the podcast to shine light on some of the people that may not have a huge social media following, but they have an incredible story that deserves a movie of their own.
Great. That's wonderful. Which guest, and I'm sure they all have redeeming value, but which guest story moved you and inspired you even?
Ooh, man, that's a very good question. I had a young woman named Shaylin on. She's a awesome woman. She actually grew up in a religious cult.
Oh,
Spent
wow.
some time had some heavy trauma and abuse as a child and stuff like that. And so just to see the strong person she's come out to be, that definitely resonates. A good friend of mine, Lance, he's the very first episode. You know, you hear a lot of stories in the recovery community, and when you're in 12 meetings, and so it's pretty hard to what's the word I'm looking for? Pretty hard to raise an eyebrow for us. We've kind of heard it all before, but
Right,
Lance had
right.
Chance has some stories that'll make your eyes pop out of your head, and you're like, how can so many people message me after that episode and were like, is that real or is he lying? I'm like, no, it's all very real, and I can show you proof of it all. And so I think each guest brings their own unique story to the table, and to be able to have men and women from all different walks of life, I don't. It's hard to pick out one. Allison Gibson, she's an Olympic athlete. She just competed
Oh,
in
wow.
Paris. She was in the Olympics before, retired, and then made her comeback this year in the Olympics. And so just there's so many things I could point out from all these people, but
Sure. Well, guess what? We have another break and we will be back with you in a couple of minutes. Thank you. I like the way you dig really deep. Why? And do you find that your clients don't want to dig deep? They don't even have the answers?
Yeah, such a great question. And the answer I would say that's a hard yes. And it's a hard yes because these are painful situations. These are
Mhm.
painful situations that sometimes, most of the time, we don't want to talk about. We avoid at all costs. We've literally, our subconscious mind has locked that door. And a lot of times we don't even know. So a lot of times when I get to the third time I ask them why, they're like, you know what, I never really thought about that because it's locked away in your subconscious. So I'll force people to go through doors that they don't want to go through. And a lot of times it'll lead back to people's childhood. Like I'll
Mhm.
talk to someone and like, well, well, growing up, I didn't have a father, so I just felt like I wasn't good enough. So like we'll get like really, really deep. And when you start getting deep like that, like I don't have to motivate them anymore. And a lot of times this is a huge eye opener. They're just like, wow, I didn't even know that.
That a question a lot too. So yeah, so usually I am a plant-based athlete. So I am a power lifter and I eat, fruit, juice, and plants. And I usually have juice for breakfast every day. And then I eat a whole food plant-based diet throughout the day. And yes, I do have sweets and treats and snacks and stuff at times. But overall, I would say my nutrition is pretty good and I do eat more holistically, and I feel like that's why, I've reversed aging and I don't have any sickness, disease, or medications, and I feel great.
Same with me. Um, I I love everything that you're saying. It's given me a revived motivation to do more of it. So welcome back, everyone. We're here with SHAWN Livingston on I Rise to Redemption is the name of this podcast. So SHAWN, how do you maintain motivation?
mm, that's a very good question. It's gonna sound probably crazy, but insecurity. Um,
Okay.
always being afraid of, there was a point in my story in my life where I had gained a bunch of weight through addiction, and even though I lost the weight and I got into running and I discovered the gym, there's still kind of always that fat kid in me that's like nervous that I'm going to go back to that. And so, just always knowing everything I do, I have a chip on my shoulder. I really don't have anything to prove to anybody, but in my mind, I do. And I
Right.
still feel like I prove everybody wrong, that I'm not this heroin addict. I'm not this bad person or anything like that. And so that's one thing. And then it does to know that there's a lot of people that come to me, message me, talk to me, that I know look up to me, and they see what I'm doing. And so it's, there's responsibility that comes with that. And so just to know people are always watching, people are listening to what you're saying all the time. So you better be on, and you better not lead people astray.
All right. Yeah. Well, I'm wondering, does your military background contribute to your approach to discipline and resilience? And, since not everyone's in the military, um, maybe you can suggest some ways, to help people with their discipline. You know what I mean?
I'd say the military gave me a really good blueprint. I didn't realize it at the time, but if you think about the way they structure a regular day, if you're stateside in the military, you're up early, you go out, you exercise, you come back, you make sure your area is all tightened up, you go to work, you get back off work, you might go do PT, work out again, you're in bed early, and it's just rinse and repeat each day, and that's a recipe for success for me, and so that's very much how my life is like. Unfortunately, I wasn't great at it when I was in the military or after in addiction, but that for sure. I would say another thing is just the way I was raised. I started working at 14 years old. Any lawn care or anything that was going down at me or my grandmother or at our house or my grandmother's house, I was doing. So, long summers working for my father, cutting trees, all that. And so I was a hard blue collar worker from the beginning, but I will say for anybody that's I'm doing a big challenge on my podcast or on my social media right now called the In a Minute Challenge, trying to motivate people to get up and get out and run. And people who run, they get it. People who do not run, it is punishment. It was punishment for me for a long. If I was running without a basketball or a football, I was in trouble for something. And so, but once I started feeling the benefits of what I got from that and the mental health benefits, the physical benefits,
Mhm.
I that no matter what, I feel better when I get done. And so the two little stories I always tell people is, I could be on my way to the gym in the morning and somebody could cut me off, and then I'm gripping my steering wheel trying to bite my lip so I don't freak out. And the same person could cut me off as I'm leaving the gym after I've worked out, and I'm just like, no problem. They're probably in a hurry. And then a very good friend of mine, the woman who got me into running, she always said, "You'll never regret going for a run, but you always regret when you don't." And it could not,
That's a
could
good
not.
one.
And so there's so many days where I'll get up and I feel super strong, and I'm going to go walk into the gym, and I might have a crappy workout that day. But then there's also days where I don't feel like I got anything in the tank, and I go get going. And once my blood starts pumping, I have an epic workout. And so there's no rhyme or reason. It's just continue to show up and take the good with the bad and just keep moving. But the hardest part is that first step, making that decision to say, I am going to go run today, or I am going to go to the gym today. It's so easy for us to just sit there and put it off and put it off and put it off.
Resonate. Right,
And
right.
nothing good in this life ever comes easy.
And that's the truth. And it sounds to me, though, that at the beginning, you really need to have the discipline of routine, like
Yes.
doing things the same way. And then when you get to a point, and I don't know if a person ever really does, but you get to a point where you now have it under control,
Yep.
that you can maybe deviate from the routine. But do you have fun? What do you do for fun
What do I do for fun? Um,
outside of running?
what do I do for fun? It's a very good question. I mean, the podcast that's fun to me. I don't ever look at that like work. There's so many things in my life that are so cool to be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
That it's almost like imposter syndrome. Like
Everything.
they're gonna figure me out pretty soon, and this is all gonna be gone. But so I don't know. Going. My wife and I later we're going to the lake with my dog. That's fun. Spending time with my wife, spending time
That's
with
great.
at home because within these past couple of years, I was able to get married. I was able to buy a house. I was able to buy my wife a car. Like all these things that I never thought were possible. So, all so surreal to me. That is very fun. Um, and on the rare occasion, I'll stay up late and watch a UFC fight. The NFL season's getting ready to start. The Steelers are looking all right this year, so that's all fun to me. But just hanging around good people, good friends, and actually enjoying having people like that in my life now because for so many years I never had any of that.
Right, right. I was just thinking the other day about we used to have these family picnics, and I look forward to that. And, by today's standards, something like that could be very boring. Like there's this addiction to adrenaline. You know what
Yep.
I mean? And for me, I'm as I get older, I am pulling back from all that. I still like adventure, and I think you could be intentional about adventure without being reckless. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
yes, sure.
So where can people see your podcast, and when does it air?
We drop episodes every Tuesday at 8 or 9 a.m. They come out. Videos on YouTube, and then we're on all the other major streaming platforms for audio, as far as Amazon, iTunes, Spotify, all the major ones.
So is the name of your YouTube channel I Am Redemption, or is it your name?
I am Redemption, and
Okay.
so it's I am Redemption for everything. I do have a personal Instagram page that's linked with the podcast page, and so usually people find one, they find the other,
Sure.
but
Sure.
Redemption and everything. And then you can always go to iamredemption.com. All the new episodes and links for that get loaded up there. And then we just started doing something where I'm starting to do Team I Am Redemption. And so many people reach out to me to come on the show. And obviously I can't have everybody on. I think we
Mm-hmm.
just released episode 36, and I have 70 odd episodes actually done. And so we're so far ahead that I have to let them keep or catch up a little bit, because the more relevant it becomes, if we're talking about something that happened today and it doesn't come out for 6 months, it doesn't make sense. And so,
Right.
yeah, just letting that catch up. And forgot where I was going with that, but hopefully I answered your question.
Yes, you did. I was attracted to your message because of the I am.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever came to my home, there's I am all over the place, and I am who am is the name of God. So I just thought it was beautiful, the title of it. So that's really what attracted me more than your story. I'm like, ooh, I got to learn more about this guy. So, what lessons have you learned that you can impart with our listeners?
I would say without a doubt, the big lesson that I've learned in all this is the importance of the people that you choose to allow to be around you. That has been
Love
absolutely
that.
life. I know for whatever reason, I used to fancy myself as a great leader when I was growing up. I thought I was a leader amongst all the kids and all that stuff. But all I know is every time I hung around people that did drugs, I did drugs. And so I needed to understand that my stepfather growing up, he'd always tell me, show me who your friends are and I'll show you who you are. And like most kids, your parents' voice just gets drowned out because you hear it all the time. And it
Yep.
took me adulthood to take a look around when all the people that were around me were doing bad and I was landing myself in jail and prison. And then now I look at my life, and I only keep people around me that are so much better than me at things, so much smarter than me at things, and good things just continue to happen. And so for me, my situation was life or death. When you're talking about heroin addiction, especially with fentanyl now, it's very serious. And so
Right.
I hit a point where I needed to there was no other option. I was looking at doing 20 years in prison, and so I had to break my life down and ask myself two questions for everything I did. Is this going to help me stay sober, and is this going to help me stay out of prison? And if it didn't align with those two things, I didn't do it. And so that went for everything. That went for if I felt like hitting the snooze button that morning, if I felt like going for a run that day, if I felt like, I used to love hanging around all the funny guys. I want to hang around the guys that are talking smack because we're going to sit there with a laugh, we're going to pass the time. And that was my MO no matter what I did, whether I was in the military, whether I was in rehab, jail, school, anything, sports. I want to hang around the funny. And all I know is every time I did that, it never served me positively. And so when got sober and I started taking a look, and it was like, all right, from now on, when I walk into rooms, I'm going to identify the people that have what I want in that room. And that doesn't mean I'm not talking about like, they have a nice car or something like
Right.
that, but they're honest. They carry themselves with some dignity, they're smart. They have good people around them. It's people like that I want to be around. And so that's all I'll surround myself around. And it's a non-negotiable thing in my life.
I love that. My dad always said, surround yourself with people who are smarter than you and can do things you can't. And, I thought he was crazy until I became an adult and had multiple businesses. And I'm like, now I know what my dad was talking about. So guess what? We got another commercial break, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Stay tuned.
That a question a lot too. So yeah, so usually I am a plant-based athlete. So I am a power lifter and I eat, fruit, juice, and plants. And I usually have juice for breakfast every day. And then I eat a whole food plant-based diet throughout the day. And yes, I do have sweets and treats and snacks and stuff at times. But overall, I would say my nutrition is pretty good and I do eat more holistically, and I feel like that's why, I've reversed aging and I don't have any sickness, disease, or medications, and I feel great.
Same with me. Um, I I love everything that you're saying. It's given me a revived motivation to do more of it.
So then what happens is your body will start signaling you by getting inflammation or having an acne outbreak or something like that. So that is where, again, the fruit comes in because fruits have the astringent power to help break up the stagnant mucus in the body. And it's the citrus fruits that really do that. So you're not going to be having an attack of like where you would just have, let's say, like if you were drinking Sunny D or that kind of juice. So that's
Right.
something I tell people. And if you are concerned about the sugar intake, you can also dilute juices like with the coconut water. But again, I've been doing juicing for many years, and juicing was the catalyst for my transformation. And I do both fruit and green juices, but I would say it's probably like a 50-50 between the fruit and greens. So I always tell people it's really important to make sure you also get your greens in as well, because you want to make sure that you're getting those minerals as well.
Welcome back, everyone. We're speaking with SHAWN Livingston. SHAWN, we just have a few minutes left, and I have a couple questions left to ask you. I wanted to know, what advice would you give someone currently struggling with addiction and feeling hopeless?
No matter how much you believe it, you're not going to be able to beat it on your own. You need the support and help other people. You need the help and support of people that have been where you've been. And so if you're tired of living that misery every single day, day in and day out, I do a lot of interventions now. And so one of the things I always say to people, I was like, look, either you have two options right now. You could wake up tomorrow and be sitting here right where you're at again for another day of this continued misery, or you could wake up tomorrow where I'm trying to take you and understand that you just took the first step to change in your life. And so that's it. You have to be willing to ask for help. Us sitting here trying to say that we're going to beat it on our own, I've yet to meet anybody that has done that successfully.
So, what is that actual tipping point? I mean, I know you're talking about an intervention. Did you have an intervention, or did you just say, I can't take it anymore and I got to go get help?
No, unfortunately, I wish I would have had an intervention, but I tried treatment so many different times it didn't work. What I needed was to get myself in a prison cell, my mother to stop picking up the phone. I needed to hit rock bottom, and that was it for me.
Oh,
She wouldn't accept like calls anymore, and that's when life became very real to me. And I was like, my own mother won't even speak to me now.
wow.
Things.
I hear that. I have four boys and one daughter, and our daughter, she was going through something. I didn't see her for a year, and it was horrible for me as a mom. So I understand, and it's nice that you responded to your mom. That's really awesome. One last question, Sean. What message would you like to leave our listeners who might be facing their own battles right now?
Um, there's again kind of like what I said with the last thing. It's we can't beat these things on our own, and so oftentimes we're feeling depressed, we're feeling hopeless, and the first thing we do is isolate ourselves and cut ourselves off from the world when that's the exact opposite of what we should be doing. Um, Not never is going to get better by laying in bed and feeling sorry for yourself, and I don't mean that insensitively because I did that for many, many. And so I hate to go back to it, but understanding that there's something bigger out there, bigger out here in this world than you, and discovering a higher power, God, and having some faith in something and just yourself is huge. And then again, surrounding yourself around good people. If you have the right people around you, they're going to help pull you out of that, and they're going to do everything they can to get you back to where you need to be. And so that, and this too shall pass. Understanding that I it was very real to me. If anybody listening to this ever watches the documentary, when I was in the middle of that 100-mile race, I would say this to people before, but then I truly understood what I was saying. Was the only way you're going to get through that. The only way we're going to get through this is just to go through it.
Right.
So until we do that, until we kind of stand up and say enough is enough, and I'm going to get through this. I had miles and miles and miles ahead of me, and I could have quit and stopped and then probably regretted that for the rest of my life. Or, yeah, this sucks right now, but I'm going to keep pushing through and get on the other side. And I mean, had I not made it through that race, I have no idea where my life would be today. And so it was the best thing I ever did, and that was the last lesson I needed. No matter how bad this sucks, I know I can get through it because I've been through some things in life, and I've been through enough. Most everyday problems, aren't as big of a deal as the things I've been through before.
Wow, that's wonderful. And the one thing that I say to people, who I'm helping to take their health back is, if you're in bed and you can't wake up or you can't get out of bed in the morning, you're not living. You're just existing. And
Exactly.
your story is so amazing, inspiring. And I really hope that there's some people out there who are going to take that first step without an intervention and maybe even reach out to you and see if you can lead them in the right direction. What a great thing. It's so good to have you on here. What an honor. I love doing this too. Sometimes I'm like, I got to do the podcast. But then after I have the conversation and how fast it goes, and depending on how many lives we could touch, it's all worth it. So I appreciate you for coming on and sharing your truth. I appreciate it. And with that, you guys, we're done for the day, and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much, Shawn.
Thank you.
This has been Taking Healthy Back with your host, Maria. Tune in each week as Maria will empower you to put your wellness in your control. Right here, Fridays, noon Eastern, on the Bold Brave TV network.